All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks again for joining us. We are here today. We're going to be chatting with NiftyQ, VGF, and Keegan about gaming and NFTs. Um, I'm going to defer to them as the experts today because my knowledge of gaming is lacking. So that's why I'm actually really excited to have this room and welcome Dan to the stage, our fearless leader. How are you?
What
How are you
up?
doing today? You're like, I got to get on this gaming stage.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of firepower on stage, and I'm ready to learn more about gaming. So thank you everybody for coming through.
Yeah, and Dan, please feel free to answer any questions you may have, because I feel like we've had a lot of these guests that are on the round table today. We've had them on before in a variety of different topics, but this is the gaming one, and I feel like everybody's like super stoked about it. And I know, like Dan, you know a lot about 10KTF. I know like you like games in general. I know you're into Yuga, so like
I don't think you could say that with Keegan here. Honestly,
you're into 10 KTF.
I don't know
We might
how.
not all understand it totally, but like we're into it, you know? Like we like to watch from the sideline. At least I do. I don't know if you've been keeping up with it lately. I've been doing a poor job, but we'll touch on it because that is something where I've complained about gamification of things, but then also have been pleasantly surprised when I have gotten into it. So, yeah, we'll talk about it. So, thanks everybody for joining us. Please tweet out the room, share, DM your friends. So just a little housekeeping up top. Firstly, there is info on Nifty Kits V7 aside from dark mode. We've added new apps, share to earn, fee allocation, royalty update that you can install to your NFT collections. Plus a lot more things are coming. They are coming. So please stay tuned for all the exciting news that we're about to drop the next few months, days, weeks, however we do math and calendars in this space. So those details are pinned up top. And as always, please visit NiftyKit to learn how you can use our tools to become a creator. So this space goes for about an hour. And then a friendly reminder that we host spaces every week. So join us back here next week for some great conversations. You're not going to want to miss that. We're going to be speaking, we're doing an AI roundtable actually. So you're going to want to tune into that, whether you love it, hate it, please show up. So with that, we are talking with our wonderful friends from the community, NiftyQ, VGF, and Keegan. And we're going to touch on something I'm personally curious about their insights on, and that is gaming and NFTs and Web3. I don't want to say like in Web3. I just put and Web3 here because semantics. So before we dive in, if you can quickly take a moment, our roundtable lists, and feel free to pin anything up top today as we chat. Um, that would be great. So I wanted to just jump right in, and I would love if you could all introduce yourselves and briefly share a little bit about your background before you got into Web3. And if you feel like sharing why you got into Web3 too, that's welcome. So, who wants to start?
Yeah, I feel like I snuck on stage with these guys like Keegan and VGF. I have some great experience, obviously, as they're in that industry, and I come at it from more of a user perspective, right? And a longtime gamer and somebody who was collecting, crypto kitties in 2017 with the dream of using those cats in what they were at the time calling the kittyverse, right? So like the idea that you could have utility for NFT assets in 2017 seemed like a long time away, and it really was, right? Like I'm only now in the last couple of years, maybe three if you count Axie Infinity, but now in an IP that I love with Board Ape Yacht Club and being able to go into the Forge and heavy metals and use these NFT assets and use ERC20 tokens inside of those games like ApeCoin has been a really cool moment for me because I've been waiting a long time. But yeah, I guess just kind of retracing to that question, I got into crypto in 2016. I really didn't have any type of like finance background. I wanted to be a coach actually, so I went to school for exercise science, and I was like really into coaching. And my buddy got me into Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I went down the rabbit hole. We started a company. Well, I should say I'm the first employee, not the co-founder, but the first employee at a company called ICO Alert, which was essentially a listing site for ICOs. So if you think about OpenSea as it exists today, maybe not as a discovery site, but as a marketplace, we were the only place at the time that you could go to find new ICOs, which essentially, again, were the investment vehicle of that cycle in 2017, 18. We rode that up to like 15, 20 full-time employees. We were listing, thousands of ICOs, taking data points, all these things. And then the market kind of bottomed in 2018. We had to shut the whole company down. And since then, I've been really on the content side and the angel investing side, and just really getting into the ecosystem on the daily. So obviously, I founded web3 in that network with Gifted, which we still do today, which is just have different types of content, form communities around what we do in web3, which is develop culture, lifestyle, and we're trying to develop that brand around those kind of ideals. So that's what I do today. But I'm excited to be here. Jess, thank you for thinking of me when it came to this room. So appreciate
Yeah,
it.
well, you had the gaming chair, so I was like, I know that you are. No, I'm kidding. I know you do a lot of videos on gaming. So yeah, you're one of my go-to people. And speaking of go-to people, VGF, when I was asking around, I knew because it's like in your bio, hello. But everybody kept saying, get VGF on this panel. And I was like, well, let me ask him. So welcome, welcome to this space. Tell us about yourself.
GM. So yeah, VGF stands for Video Game Freak. It's been my online handle for the better part of 20 years. I think it's over 20 years now. So thank you to my 13-year-old self for having some branding and marketing insight early on. But yeah, I've been a lifetime competitive gamer, was a professional gamer for a couple of years, in kind of my alter ego IRL life. Have a background in like operations and marketing, and a little bit of sales, which like Web3 kind of was the intersection of all of my collective like passions, interests, and some of my like prior work experience. But it was really like the concept of sovereign agency and ownership of digital goods, particularly around gaming, that once that idea clicked for me, I was all in on Web3. I literally like left my comfortable position in a career, took about a month to get my affairs in order, and was working full time in Web3 before I was being compensated to do so. And so yeah, it was kind of like just taking a big gamble on myself to play catch up / get ahead. Gave myself about 6 months worth of runway to just make something happen. But I knew that this was where I wanted to be. But in relation to gaming, again, been competitive gamer for most of my life. And in Web3, I work with Pixel Vault, which is currently a contributor to the Reboot protocol, which we're looking forward to launching here very soon, and currently in development of a 3v3 auto brawler, kind of a subgenre of auto chess, that should be launching alongside Reboot here pretty soon.
That's awesome. I am very inadequate to understand a lot of what it is that you're working on and developing, but I like that your former 12 or 13-year-old self knew what you were going to be in your heart. And also, I don't know if anyone's told you this, but we're early, allegedly. So I think that everything that you've been working on and developing is like so it's very impressive. So I'm very excited to have you here today. Thank you. Keegan, welcome to the stage. A big fan of you. Love everything that you've been doing. Love the education component that you bring to this space too. So please tell everybody who you are and yeah, just a little bit about you.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't know I had fans. That's cool. I guess I got a couple out there. But no, I just yeah, thanks for having me and thanks for bringing me on this panel with some wonderful people. I've had the pleasure of meeting a pretty good amount of individuals in this space in real life, so that's always nice to connect on that level. But yeah, just a little bit about myself. So my in real life work, I still work full time in education. San Diego Unified. I was a classroom teacher for 10 years. I taught English, physical education, and ALD, academic language development. And then for the past 2 years, I've been at the district office overseeing some other things. So kind of switched gears and moved into that role, which has been a blessing, if you will. And it's allowed me to have a lot more flexibility to spend more time in this space because I do think that this is something really special and amazing that's being built. And I know a lot of people in this room have been around in here as long as I've been in the space. And I jumped in April of 2021. But I feel like, I couldn't do certain things. Like I was like, I can't do coding. I can't do art. Well, what do I do? Well, I know teaching pretty damn well. Like I did it for over 10 years in the classroom. And so, when you have students Monday through Friday, 30 to 50 students in class, 5 classes, it's about 150 personalities you're seeing in one day in and day out. Like those skill sets can translate over a little bit here. So, yeah, so I just brought my skill sets from my in real life education and then decided to kind of support what I was spending some time with, which was 10KTF. And so I started 10KTF Teaching Tuesdays. It's a community run space. And, I try to cover a few different things from some weekly happenings in the beginning. I try to have some guests on and then I go into 10KTF, the story, and kind of just take questions and discuss, for anybody that's new or wants to catch up or anybody that wants to hang out. And so I just felt like that's what I can contribute right now because really a lot of us know how much energy and effort and time being in Web3 and NFTs can be. And so it's comes to a point where I felt like, you need to be realistic and honest with yourself. Like to grind for 12 hours a day, 10 hours a day, day in and day out on your phone, on the Discord, like it's a lot. So I decided to just do what I knew I could do. And a little bit can go a long way. And so that's why I said, you know what, I'm still working full time. I'm just going to be in Web3 NFTs part time and try and build a presence and contribute in some way because, there are bad actors in the space. And I just feel like myself, along with others on the stage, we can help contribute in a meaningful way to help bring new eyes, new ears over the next few years as things continue to still develop. Because, like you said, we are early, even though it feels like there's so much already the past year, 2 years or week that happens that we're actually, falling behind. But we're really not falling behind because we're still setting the foundational pieces. So yeah, so it's a little bit about me.
I love that. And like any good educator, I love how you summarize that all too, back to, that we are early. I look around at people in the room right now and it's funny because we're in our own little bubble at times. And then you see stuff hit the news and you're like, we've been talking about this for 3 years. And then most of you on the panel, like you've been here for like, I don't know, like almost like a decade. So you know a lot of what's going on. And so I appreciate that, Keegan. But I also want to know when 10KTF 101 seminar at your college. That would be amazing to start teaching classes like that. And I don't think we're too far away from this being even more popular. I mean, I don't live in the Bay Area, so there's probably tons of classes like this already. But so I do want to pivot and I want to open up the discussion with a question that it's a little like gossipy kind of question, but I'm always so curious. And I want to start off by understanding what I presume to be this historical attitude of traditional gamers when it comes to NFTs. So if anybody wants to pick that up and start with it, I would love to hear your perspectives on that.
Oh, this is a good one. So in relation to NFTs, most gamers frankly just don't give a shit. There is a negative connotation attached to crypto and NFTs in gaming because gamers are used to being exploited. When they see this new monetization method, they're apprehensive because that's all we've come to know. People were really apprehensive of free to play gaming when it first came out and advertising based gaming because it was just another extraction method. We had this tried and true method of you go to the game store, you spend $60 at the time $50 on a game, and that was it. Anything beyond that was what's the trickery here? But with Fortnite, that largely helped pave the way for free to play and microtransaction gaming broadly, mobile gaming, making some huge contributions to that. And anything in association with crypto had this tinge of scamminess associated with it, which, to be fair, was based in some truth because there was a lot of people in and around gaming that were leveraging their audiences to scam people. So it's kind of half based in reality and half based on misinformation and naivety and ignorance. But I think that is a hill that we will overcome because a lot of it's based in untruths. That there is no value add here, that everything that you can do in Web3 can be done on a traditional server, and that's just not the case. There are intrinsic value adds to decentralized protocols for gaming, or sovereign agency and ownership of your digital stuff. And so when I kind of take those threads and kind of peel them apart, I do think that there are fundamental value adds to having blockchain backed assets leveraged in gaming, and that however long it takes, whether it's in the next couple of years or 5 or 10 years, I do think we eventually hit that inflection point where consumers will demand ownership of their digital stuff.
That's great. NiftyQ, go ahead.
Yeah, it's also the one really sad thing that gamers don't understand this, because it gets to the heart of digital ownership, right? Hey, you're on this game hours and hours and hours out of your life, days of your life, and don't you want to be able to own the things that you're interacting with all the time? And they simply don't want to do that, and partly it's because, again, to VGS's point, the gamers are cynical. They're cynical not only to Web3 games, right? They're probably gamers are essentially toxic to a lot of the largest studios as well, and that's because they've been burned so many times. So to some extent, it's gamers are just skeptical of everything, so they're going to be skeptical of Web3 games. The other piece that I'll just add in here is they don't like Web3 games because Web3 games aren't very good. Try to onboard someone. Try to onboard somebody in 2017, to gaming, when literally Ethermon. I remember this one project. You would it was like a offshoot of Pokemon, and you had your MetaMask wallet and all this stuff, but you literally had to spend gas on a transaction to move from instance to instance, and that transaction took 5 minutes. And so the games have gotten better since then, but the games are still not good. And so maybe it's oversimplifying, but I think gamers will like Web3 games more when there's better Web3 games.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get into this in a little bit too. I want to give Keegan a moment to respond to that, and I have a few other things before we get to that specific thing, NiftyQ, because I have some pretty specific things that I would like to hear your guys' feedback on.
Yeah, I guess I'll just chime into what was just said. But I mean, Yeah, I think it's kind of a lack of understanding and awareness. And like VGF mentioned, there was a lot of negative connotations in general. And so if individuals don't take the time to kind of figure out what's what, then they're already going to have like their misconception already set. So if it's already set that way, why are they going to take the next step to even like spend time there? But I do think that things have shifted over these years, and I think a good point that was just brought up also, I think it was NiftyQ. It's like the lens. It's almost the ownership aspect. Like that was never even really like a perspective that gamers, at least when I was growing up, I didn't feel like that was something that was thought about. Like it was almost just like, hey, I'm playing to be entertained, to have some fun. Whether that was a console, like I'm dating myself, N64. Before there was all these elements of skins, of packs, of like buying with V-Bucks, like in Fortnite. Like those were not elements that were part of a video game when I was playing games growing up. So, but once you start to add those elements in, all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're just buying these extra things, but you don't really think as much. You start to feel a little bit like, oh, I have ownership because I'm picking my shirt, I'm picking my shoes, and this design. It really goes with who I identify with, what my look and feel is. But the actual concept of ownership of digital assets in a video game, I think that discussion and dialogue is what still needs to happen a lot more so that people can connect those dots. And once those dots are started to be connected, I think it's going to be a huge, huge deal. And I'm guessing you're going to see a lot of these streamers and individuals really shift gears and change their tones once that's really accepted by the masses, if you will.
So I feel like, you just touched on basically more or less the current state of gaming, maybe more so gaming in web3 a bit. And I was thinking about how there are many Venn diagrams here that could be, one could kind of see that there's crossover, but I see that there's one starting or has, already started between gamers and NFT collectors. Could someone distill this down to a fine point? Because I have heard yes and no. Like I've heard people get onboarded through NFTs through gaming and vice versa. People that are obviously not resistant to, or gamers that are not resistant to it, and then collectors that are not resistant to gaming. And I am honestly, when I learned this several years ago when I entered the space, that gamers really weren't into this whole NFT thing. But then seeing how we were using a lot of gamer type, I guess you would say, applications or platforms, and we were using what's the one that you guys are always on playing games, streaming? I can't remember the name; it's just escaped my brain. We're using all of these things, but I feel like there's so much crossover there. And I wonder what you think about the crossover between gamers and NFT collectors. And yeah, if someone could just kind of distill it down to a fine point of what's going on here. Like
I'll take a stab at that.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like chicken or the egg, but I don't even know how to properly ask this question, but thank you, VGF.
Well, so I think to like take it back a few layers, you have to make the clarification and distinction between like what real gamers are looking for. And again, like taking it even back a step further, that most gamers just don't care right now. But then in the like active participants in Web3 are largely speculators, not collectors. And in that, they're looking for yield, they're looking for returns, they're speculating on future anticipated value of these digital assets rather than what they're currently able to be used for. And with that, like you had this kind of like natural progression of projects in the space, like using these digital assets in digital experiences, i.e. games of some sort, seems like such a natural marriage and progression. But then we had so many projects that leaned into that without real game makers being involved. Like, how many projects from early 2021 had all of these expectations and promises of delivering these crazy games, and then like we've maybe seen a couple come out, and like granted there are some that are like in development right now that I'm massively optimistic and excited about, but developing dope shit, especially in games, like takes a lot of fucking time. Like, there's just an absolutely obscene amount of like labor and man hours that go into developing some of these things, and the reality of like most of those expectations and promises from early on is like, okay, their promise of a cool game leveraging these assets was like a sandbox plot. Like, that's it's just like a huge disconnect from like expectations and reality. And I think that there is this like practical application layer of like how these assets can be tangible value adds to the end user. And then there's like the promise and the future of where we think it can go and realistically will go in the very near future. It's just that there's a whole bunch of layers in between and a lot of shades of gray that we just haven't really built through yet. It's we're still like participating in this very niche economy, like couple tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 active users, and traditional gaming that has hundreds of millions of users, and a just ridiculous hurdle of onboarding that needs to be cleared, that can be attacked from like a million different directions, whether it be like the traditional onboarding of teaching people about self-custody and the power and responsibility that comes with that, which is a lot of friction. It's probably the most responsible way about going about doing that, but there's a lot of friction there. You've got like these middleman type, custodial solutions, which I think are a good bridge and will inevitably need to be there. But we haven't really found that sweet spot yet. There's a lot of companies that are really, taking good cracks at this problem right now. And then you've got like a whole bunch of other stuff where like they just, the game custodies it for you. And then if you want to send it out to self-custody it yourself, like more power to you, but you don't have to. And I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all answer. I think that it's kind of like fit for the use case, fit for the audience. And that's what makes it so hard, is there's not just one answer to rule them all, but like that we'll see a lot of cracks at this problem. And it's more so like, what is a fit for the game? What is a fit for the audience? And that like we'll probably find somewhere in the middle where it's a mix of all of these things.
This is, I mean, you say that it's very layered, and I agree in terms of, it does feel like as soon as all three of you started speaking about different aspects of this, it's like an onion, just like the layers of an onion. And I personally want to know how and why did gaming get introduced in tandem with NFT project roadmaps? And this question goes for anybody. And if you want to tack on also to what VGF was saying, if you can share some examples of, who started, like, I want to know who started this, like, who started doing this? Like, how did these get introduced with NFT roadmaps? Like, I want to understand this better.
Yeah, the timeline piece there is I think super important if you're looking to like peel back the onion of Web3 gaming, right? I think Axie Infinity is probably the biggest example of the narrative of 2021 when these assets first, or 2020 when these assets first started to come to prominence, and so this idea of play to earn started to really grab hold, and everybody threw it in their roadmap, and that's why everybody raised millions of dollars, yada yada yada. And I do think this is where the non Web3 gamers have a platform to stand on, because a lot of my gamer friends that aren't in Web3, a lot of their response is like, I don't want to play a game to speculate on making money, and that is the crux and the sword that we died by in 2021, because Axie Infinity and all of these games that raise millions of dollars and their token prices shot up and yada yada yada. The point of the games was to make money. They were talking about, whole families in the Philippines like quitting their jobs and supporting themselves playing Axie Infinity. And while that's a cool narrative, to support yourself playing video games, the whole model that they propped up was unsustainable, and everybody copied exactly what Axie Infinity was trying to do. So instead of it being about, okay, I'm playing this awesome game and I get to own the assets in them, it was, how can I make the most amount of money playing this game? And that's really the 21 downfall that we saw. And that was the first time it really came in mass, is this play to earn concept.
Is this also like Steppen? Is that in the same family or no?
Yeah, yes and no.
It's like these shades of what we consider gaming, right? Like there's what we can view as like traditional gaming of these immersive type experiences, these digital worlds, but then there are these layers of these meta games, and that's where I would kind of put some of those in, of like there's really not a pretty beautiful UI UX virtual world you're engaging within, but there is these layers of gamification where you can play these kind of financial meta games, and to some people that's their jam. Like, more power to them. It's not my jam. That's not my cup of tea, but to some people it is. And so I think it does a disservice to invalidate that entirely, but the hyper financialization is the part that
Yes.
got us into a lot of trouble. And that's
Focus.
where I think like play to earn as a concept was kind of bastardized. Like when you like distill it all down, do I think that players should earn some of the value that they contribute to a gaming ecosystem? Yes, absolutely. Like, I think there is something fundamentally broken in the traditional gaming model where content creators outside of sponsorships and endorsements aren't able to earn some of the value that they contribute to the amount of revenue that they drive. Like, I see that as an issue, a fundamental problem to be fixed, that Web3 it has the capability of helping to attack in certain ways. But the hyper financialization of quote unquote play to earn was built off of these Ponzinomics. And that's where I think there's this disconnect. Like when I think about like where gaming got like tied into like blockchain and NFTs, I think back to like CryptoKitties. That was a meta game that was very largely built, like their branding was built in and around gaming. It wasn't necessarily the same type of gaming as a lot of people would associate with quote unquote gaming, but it was a game. Like Axie Infinity, I think is the most popular example of this. But like I think to Dark Forest, like on-chain MMO real-time strategy game, like fully on-chain. And so like and then you've got kind of this this concept of autonomous worlds, like where the entire game state on chain, like that everything is decentralized and capable of like it's setting up almost these primitive layers of the game, and that is like loot, where you basically have like this data layer that people can then interpret and abstract off of to create these gaming experiences. And so just highlighting there that like there's a lot of shades of gray of what some people may or may not consider to be gaming. And I think people need to broaden their view a little bit of what like qualifies per se as gaming. Like there's none of these are the end all be all, and all have like relevant use cases or like audiences that are eager for those type of experiences.
NiftyQ, you're on my king.
Yeah, I don't want to step in front of Keegan's got something, but one of the things that this space is absolutely phenomenal at is taking a great idea in milking the absolute shit out of it or rugging completely. And that's what happened here. Play to earn isn't a bad concept. Investing in ICOs isn't a bad concept. Investing in NFTs isn't a bad concept, but it's always bastardized to its fullest.
Yeah, I mean, just to add, I mean, it kind of comes down to like, well, are they actually going to deliver? Is this made up, or is this actually something that's going to be quality? There's projects that say, oh, it's going to be on our roadmap, we're going to have a game, but it's like the reality is the audience that we're there that has been talked to and spoken to is like, we don't have patience in this space. A lot of people don't have patience, and it's like BGS said earlier, it takes a long time, and it has to be done well, like for it to be good. Like people can make games, but that's just because you made it doesn't mean people are going to show up and play. Like if something's not fun, if it's not engaging, if it's not going to be worth your time, why are you going to be there? And so I think that was capitalizing on the timing of like what was happening in 2021 is like, oh yeah, it's play to earn. Oh, we're gonna have a game. It's on the roadmap. Oh, and then you start talking about, oh, they're gonna have a game. Oh, they're gonna do this, but it's like, but it's not really there yet, And so it's gonna take these different form factors, I think, and the definition of gaming and NFTs, I think, is gonna take different form factors as a whole. Like we'll see people that will be passive players, that will be active players, that will be proactive players. And when it comes down to it, it's like the people that play and stream online now, how do they get compensated for their time and energy and the revenue that they drive? Like BGF touched on, it's like, you need to have sponsors, you have to have deals, you have to have all that stuff. But in reality, not everybody has that capability. So when you hear something like, oh, play to earn, cool, I could just play this game, let me jump right into it real quick and start jamming, I'm gonna have some cash and some loot, but it doesn't really pan out that way. There's a lot more steps and layers, And then in reference to the whole collector and stuff like that, I think you touched on it earlier, is like, I think a few weeks ago even, we've seen some of these things where there'll be like a skin from like a Counter-Strike deathmatch, finals tournament that sells for a ridiculous amount of money. And VGF or at NiftyQ, I don't know if you remember seeing that a few weeks ago, but I mean, that happens every so months. There's always something like that, it's like, but it's within their ecosystem. It's kept within it. It's not like I can move that outside into the Pixel Vault metaverse or to the other side metaverse or to the 10KTF metaverse or the Sandbox. It's internal. And so that's what's going to be the big shift, I think, once we kind of get these norms established and kind of like get the real players that are here for the long haul to really help drive the conversation, which is what you're doing, Jessica, which I appreciate.
Well, I mean, I definitely consider myself a cynic when it comes to these things because, I mean, the first thing that I always think of is, okay, how difficult is it to make an RPG game? And I just, like, my mind explodes because I can't even imagine how long those take to develop, how expensive they are to develop. And when I hear somebody whose skill level is on par with mine putting out a project, however big or small it is, saying they're going to do a game, I go, no, you're not, girl or guy, because I know enough to know that that is really kind of impossible unless you have a partnership with somebody at that company that makes games. And still, even it's going to be like 2, 3, even more years out till you develop something like to that scale of in the gaming industry. It's like the same way I was and sorry, NiftyQ, just 1 second, I just wanted to add this little bit of just my own testimonial. Like, I have a friend who works in toys, and he was telling me that from conception to completion, like, dolls take years. So I'm like, if a doll takes years, how many years is it going to take for, like, anybody in this room with that they're not gaming professionals but have NFT collections to make a fully fledged like RPG type game? Like, to me, I'm not saying like you can do anything you set your mind to, but I mean, being realistic about it. And like, I have something to tack on to that after, but NiftyQ, please.
I think you're hitting on something really important. And I think there's 2 things to this. One, my mental model went exactly there right when I was buying those CryptoKitties, right? Like you think massive multiplayer online universe type environment. And there's another part to this that's what the projects were selling, right? Like everybody came in and said, we're going to build the next World of Warcraft, or we're going to build the next, Eve Online or anything like that. But it doesn't need to be that way, right? Like in that everybody's mind, I think, goes to that. Like I said, my mind went to it first when I first was thinking about NFTs, but shifting
The
that model
GTA
to,
of the metaverse.
yeah, exactly. Like shift that model to make a mini game and have NFTs involved with it. And that's what the genius of Dookie Dash. They had this live for 2 weeks, and it highlighted the use case of NFTs. It highlighted the use case of having that as a reward. Obviously, like the major gamer Mongrel won this key after playing Dookie Dash for 2 weeks, and he was tweeting about it to his millions of followers that are Web 2 gamers, right, or non Web 3 gamers. So I understand like the want to like think about it in the massively multiplayer online like universe, but it doesn't have to start that way. And that's where my mental model had shifted, seeing things like Dookie Dash, seeing things like Heavy Metal, which are essentially mini games that have NFTs, and not this like huge unattainable thing you throw on your roadmap to create the next World of Warcraft.
Well, that's the thing. I think people have been presenting it in a way of go big or go home. Like, think about, I don't know what's going on with the Yetis and all of that, but a lot of early promises that were made, and I'm not clowning on, I love the Yetis, but I
I'll
think that,
clown on him. I'll clown on him for you.
oh, I'm sure a lot of people will clown on them in this room.
I clowned on him at the time, and I got chased out of rooms for it.
Oh yeah, I hope it wasn't one of our
I'll just add
rooms.
this here. When you take a launch, like, and to me this just boils back down to expectations and managing expectations, because when you're looking to raise a few $100,000 or millions of dollars off of a mint, and I, as an experienced gamer, having worked semi-tangentially and in parallel with game development, know how much it costs to build some of these games, and the amount that you're raising does not align with what you're promising. Big red flag, right? Like, I either you're then going to have to go and raise millions of dollars and many years worth of development to deliver what you're expecting or promising. But like, going back to like what you were talking about with like MMOs categorically speaking are some of the most difficult games to develop. Like, and you talk about like the game layer, like the visual surface level game, the near game, the meta game, all of these layers of design, like pre-planning, pre-production, production, which can be years, testing, pre-launch, launch, post-production, maintenance, like bugs and fixes. And like in gaming nowadays, more and more games leaning towards this kind of live service model updates, where it's a progressive rollout rather than a fixed launch like we saw in traditional gaming, like even 5, 10, 15 years ago. And so it's this constant iterative evolution rather than this kind of like fixed thing. And it takes like many hundreds of thousands of dollars to even develop the most basic of games. And like when you have these projects promising the world, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars worth of game development, and likely multiple years. Like, for our game, just for perspective, we're many millions of dollars into production, partnership with AAA studios for animation, hand drawn animation, bringing in like game designers from like Unity, Unreal, like all of these things. And we're still pushing like 24 months worth of development for like throwing an army at this thing. And so it just kind of like, to me, almost shows like the naivety a little bit. Not that people are ignorant per se, but like just naivety, that people think that like, oh yeah, we want to go build a game. Well, are you a game builder? Because if not, then you got to find someone that is, and they're going to tell you you can throw as much money as you want at this, and it's just going to take more and more human capital. You need more bodies. You need more people building this game. And you hit this threshold of like, you can only build something so quickly, no matter how many people you throw at it.
It's interesting to hear you talk about it like this too, because like I know nothing about the gaming world other than, you know, what I've heard through these spaces over the years, and also just being a, you know, a participant and like playing some games from home and, you know, having fun. And like, it was nice to see Dookie Dash actually, because that was really, it was gross, but it was engaging. You know, people seemed to have a fun time with the Dookie Dash thing, and it seemed to be successful. But what I was going to say is that, you know, I think that there's this inflated or maybe even like delusional. I don't mean to use these words to sound negative, but, you know, say you have an NFT project and you make X amount of millions of dollars. Well, it's just like, do you know how many millions of dollars it's going to take to make a video game? And I think that me, with my lack of knowledge in this, at least I know that because I've worked in production for so long that it's just like, oh God, like you're going to need teams of people. Like you're going to be working with engineers and developers, and like, that's millions, baby. Like that's gonna cost you more than your little rinky dink NFT project sold out for. Like you're gonna be taking a like loan out against your house if you want to get this video game built. So just kind of having like that attitude about it. But go ahead, BGF.
Well, just kind of a couple things on the topic of Yuga, because I think what they're doing is really interesting. Like there's multiple production studios involved with the development and release of the games that they've been rolling out, and I think it's like multifaceted in that they're addressing like the attention and desire and need of their community to want to play these games, while simultaneously bridging the gap until they can deliver their pentultimate gaming experience, which I believe to be the other side. And I think that like they knew both sides of this equation of like, well, we can't not give them anything in the 2+ years it's going to take us to roll out the other side, and we're only going to be able to deliver like some of these alpha, beta, you know, whatever experiences of the other side in the interim. So what are some of these kernels and nuggets of gaming experiences that we can deliver in the meantime? And kind of going back to that like spectrum of what people perceive to be gaming, like I think these are like, if you look at the game designs, like these are tried and true game designs. Like an endless runner type game is not particularly new. It's a very popular game. You know that it's going to be like dopamine hits. You know it's going to be fun. It's got an ape in there, so like cool. Look at that thing. You got a whole bunch of people that were airdropped a shit ton of ape coin and are eager, like have it burning a hole in their pocket, eager to spend it. And so I think it solved a lot of those addressed a lot of those problems for them, but it wasn't built to be this game with any longevity, right? It was fit for a purpose. It served that purpose, and you're not going to have people like going back to it like, damn, I wish I could go play some more rounds of Dookie Dash right now, you know. But that's okay. Like it fit its use case. It did what it needed to do, and now you've got heavy metal, you've got the Coda game, you've got these other things that they're teeing up to kind of like keep providing these gaming experiences until you get to that more thorough, fleshed out game with a lot of depth to it, which I perceive to be the other side. So I do want to give them like some kudos there, because I think it is interesting the way that they've approached it. I think that narratively speaking, it's going to be very interesting to see how they try and weave all of these worlds together, and maybe that is what other side ultimately is kind of like their playground where anything goes and all of the worlds can kind of collide. I don't know, but I do want to give them credit for attacking the problem in a way that just about no other company in Web3 right now arguably could. And I think everyone, in my opinion, should be rooting for Yuga to win, because I think they're, them having successes, even small wins, is wins for the space.
I completely agree. I want to give Keegan a chance to respond too.
So does this mean we're not getting the Yeti game? Is that what's happening? We're not getting that?
I don't know.
Just
I
kidding.
saw that. I saw that Yeti. That Yeti was like running in motion. He was picking up things. I don't know. I just feel like we at least need some kind of like, little trailer or something to satiate us.
Yeah. I mean, what it comes down to is the experience. I think that once things are fun and you don't even know that there's NFTs within it, that's when we're going to start to have the engagement and adoption. And I think that is some of the things that Yuga is starting to do within their games as they start to roll a couple more out, like the Legends of Mara, which is another one. I do think Battletown Season 2 in 10KTF is going to be another demonstration. And I think what VGF and them have over at Pixel Vault cooking with the reboot platform that's on Arbitrum, like, they're going to have some cool shit. Like, there's going to be people and projects that help to lead and set some norms. And I think, like I just said, once you don't even know that there's NFTs within it, that the core, it has the blockchain and Web3, but then on the shell, it's like Web 2.5, let's say, that's where we're going to have people start to participate a lot more. And they're going to be like, oh, this is awesome. This is fun. I want to play. And the engagement, for example, like the Damn Show, which is another community run spaces, live stream, YouTube channel, shout out to Atari, Diamond Hands, and Maybe. But they did these interactive games where you could participate, connect with your wallet to these games. I forget the actual name. There's like 3 of them. One was like sushi, sumo, whatever. And you would connect, and then you could actually win prizes for participating in these games. And so I think that part where you start to see each other on these leaderboards, you start to connect. Oh, that's VGF. He's in first place. And NiftyQ, he's in second place. And Jessica, she's in fifth place. Like, when you start to see each other, you have a stronger connection and you're going to engage more. Same thing with VFriends and like Burn Island. Like, it's not a game per se, but there's gamification elements. And so I think that's what we're going to start to see as one of the phases to actually move towards more acceptance. Because like NiftyQ said, we don't need to go to 0 to 100 real quick. We don't need to be 100% off the break. Like, let's go to level 1, 2, and 3. Let's get some learners to actually establish these avenues, to have these supports, to have it reinforced so people can connect and have awareness before we start throwing a high level, high experience where the majority of the percent of people that are in Web3 are not going to be operating at that level. I'll admit right now, I don't hold the heavy metal, but I'm damn sure entertained by watching from the sidelines and seeing all these meta and social dynamics play out. Like, you have Other Space FM, they're live streaming right now. They're on for hours on end. And so you see these human dynamics where people are experiencing stuff together, and it creates these stories and memories as you start to develop over these weeks, over these months, over these years. And on top of it, the fact that these assets will transfer over into another game, it's going to be pretty amazing to see it play out. And so I'm really excited to see how things start to form with what VGF and them are doing over at Pixel Vault, with everything that they have with Battle Plan and all of the mutants and all the inhabitants and all this stuff. Like, there's a lot of exciting stuff here, and it doesn't have to be 100% already, but like, let's start giving like the attention to where like there's quality being built. Let's do the retweets, let's do the likes, and let's uplift the real people, and not just be talking about freaking meme coins day in and day out, watching the floor rise, watching the floor. It's just like, I don't know. I just get frustrated with that sometimes, which for me, that's why I like to do my show once a week, and I follow a couple projects pretty heavily, because I want to invest my time where I feel like it's genuine and people are authentic, and not just freaking jaw-jacking day in and day out, Monday through Friday. So anyway, that's just my little 2 cents I wanted to add in.
No, I love that. And that's something why I think I got involved or intrigued by 10KTF, because I felt like I didn't buy into that because there was like a gaming roadmap. I just found out because I was the holder of a certain NFT that I was able to participate. And I feel like that was so slick, so sly how they did that, and it gathered a lot of momentum, of interest, you have like people involved, and then the storytelling, stuff that I'm typically not interested in, I got wrapped up in. So I think that a lot of, I guess, like that gamification aspect, when you realize that, oh, hey, you can enter in on this game because you have these assets, then I think a curiosity starts to grow, like within an individual, especially in the space, people that are in Web3 that are like, yeah, I'll check this out. Maybe you won't play it forever, or maybe you'll sell off those assets eventually, but at least you got to experiment in it, and you can say that you did this thing, and whether you liked it or not is kind of irrelevant. It's just that it was there. It provided a use case for, people participating in this. So I think that is particularly interesting. Go ahead, NiftyQ.
Mm-hmm.
Keegan, do you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to add real quick. I mean, and that's one of the things I really appreciated with ThinkKTF, the project, is that the scaffolding and the learning curve is not too fast. It's not too high too soon. And that's what I really liked about it. It's like, okay, we're going to all participate in this off-chain staking game. It's not a 3D metaverse. It's not like we're running around first-person shooter. It's storyline where we're involved, and we have our digital assets that represent our digital identity, our avatars from our parent PFPs, and we can actually put them into Battletown, and we're all collectively on this mission. So that dynamic of we're together, we're all going through this journey and this story, that's the game in essence in itself. The fact that you became rewarded with different other NFTs made it even that much more cooler. And the fact that they utilized IP from other projects to actually write into the story, from Cryptodes, from Boss Wolf, from Wolf Game, from Boss Ape, from Bored Apes. Like, that's a really creative dynamic that makes it a really fun experience.
Go ahead, Nifty.
Man, you guys are killing it. I think, Jess, you were hitting on something really important there, talking about it being interactive and you participating, because that's essentially the North Star for gaming, right? Other than the fact that millions of people spend a ton of money on games every year in these microtransactions, and there's actual revenue streams and all these different things when it comes to business. The real North Star for me is like you get to participate in that storytelling. Like that's where people got this wrong with Dookie Dash, is like they were looking at it saying, oh, that's like not I don't understand it. Like it's just a simple game. It's like you see that ape there, like that's me. Like I'm participating in this game and in the storytelling of Yuga. And so and what they're building out on the other side. And so that part is so important. Like that and you see that PFPs, like the projects that are doing extremely well right now, are telling great stories still, and the ones that aren't are not. So you even see like there's a little bit of a like anime narrative that's playing out right now in an anime meta, that if you launch an anime trailer, oh, you lose me.
Did you get a call?
Yeah, I got a call.
Go ahead.
No, just that anime narrative is playing out because people want to be involved and see PFP projects that tell great stories. So that's honestly, and I'll keep this like relatively short. Like that's where my thesis on the other side has shifted. Like at first I was like, oh, this is going to be a really cool place for the Bored Apes and the mutants to tell their story in this cool like Unreal Engine environment. Whereas like Sandbox, gained a lot of prominence in the last bull run by being a medium that other projects could tell their story in. So I think the other side will be like the Sandbox on steroids. So if you go to the Sandbox profile now, like what you'll see is like they'll tweet, but really they have a lot of retweets too, because what they've done is built the platform and then allowed other communities to build on top of the Sandbox. And all they really have to do if they wanted to is retweet. And it's just a bunch of different people building in the Sandbox. I think other side will be like that. I think Meebits, I think World of Women, I think Cryptodes, I think all of these different projects will be telling their story in the other side. And I think that's where the really good stuff's going to happen. Whereas I initially was just like, oh, it's going to be for Bored Apes. It's not. It's going to be for Web3 to tell their story.
I like this perspective too because it kind of like throws into sharp relief like why we hold, why we diamond hands a lot of our, I guess you could say, legacy PFPs. Like even as they're going down, looking at this for anybody in the room that's, like disagreeing with their phone right now as I say this, I think like instead of selling off my assets, like holding on to them because you don't know what you're going to be able to use in the future, holding on to them. So like that's kind of where I am mindset. Like I hold a World of Women. I don't care that it's decreased in value because of other side. I don't know what's going to be available, and I think that's the no. I have two assets that I would probably be able to use in other side. So I'm curious, and I want to hold on to it because I'm interested in the tech, actually, which is a weird thing for me to say. But why sell it? Like I already invested time, money, effort in learning in this space. So I think like that's going to make a case for a lot of people to just hold on to things so they can continue to experiment. I know we have to wrap up pretty soon. So if you guys want to just hang out for a few more minutes, just a few more things I kind of wanted to throw at you. When you get into an NFT project or a community in Web3 that says, I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, but that says that a game is part of their roadmap for each of you individually, is that a red flag for you, knowing what you know about gaming?
I would. I'm of both minds about it because it can either be something that is like transparent and honest and like that they have the manpower, skills, background to go about actually developing a game. I think if anything, it just raises further questions in my mind of like, do they have prior game experience or have they brought on someone with game experience to help them flesh this out? Uh, or it can be the reddest of flags, right? That it is something that would keep me very far away and likely have me calling them out on their inability to actually deliver on this. So I think it is likely almost just like a leading question of just bringing up more things of like, okay, do they have the like based on their expected revenue from this mint, are they able to go and develop what they say they're going to, or is it going to need outside investment and capital? Do they have the manpower, experience, skills to do what they say they're going to do, etc. But I think that gaming is such a natural tie and kind of like progression from where we see these digital assets that like it's not going away anytime soon. Like we're very likely going to see a lot of existing projects try and pivot into gaming, just to deliver some kind of digitally native experience to these token holders.
Yeah, you don't want VGF asking questions for sure. That's scary. But
no, or you do, because I'm going to ask good questions.
Keegan, red flag for you?
I don't know if it's a red flag per se, but I mean, I probably would do my own due diligence just to see, like, okay, like BGF, like who's behind the team? Do they have the capability? Do they have the capacity? And then I like to like compare, like, okay, what's being done? Is it at this level? Can they operate? Who's leading the charge? And will they stand the test of time? Like, I do think there's going to be more verticals and more avenues for projects to try and explore to bring some level of gaming because it's an avenue that there should be something. And so I want to kind of like share also, I'd be doing a disservice if I don't share this part, is that being a part of Oniforce, like Oniforce is making some inroads where we're not developing a full-on game, but there's going to be a map in Fortnite that's going to be the Oniforce enclave built into that. So just like we saw recently where Nike had a whole experience with their, I think it was through the dot swoosh kind of thing, and they have the whole theme, like a map that you play in Fortnite. So same kind of thing where we're going to have something like that where it's going to create a lot of eyes and ears and awareness with millions of users that get exposure to the IP of Oniforce. Now, is there NFTs embedded within that? No, but It's seeing the product, it's seeing the brand, it's seeing what's happening. And then that becomes a good bridge, in my opinion, because it's not the other side. It's not fully built out in that metaverse, but it's a good stepping stone to get us into the right direction where you need to be going on multiple avenues and bringing all of it together. Because in the end, you want your projects to succeed. And are you being creative about it? Are you having a strategy that's going to be a sound strategy, or are you just throwing darts at the wall and hoping for the best? It's like, there's things that are done the right way, and there's things that are done sloppy. And so I think Force is doing an awesome job. I may be biased because I'm a holder, but I still do see a lot of creativity and leadership that's really been holding it down. So shout out to Star Lordy and Champanini down there, community manager, that been supporting that the charge on that.
Yes, we love Force. And I also love the idea of, I was going to bring this up earlier, but we're already over, just this idea of collabing, getting with these larger industries and collaborating instead of trying to like reinvent the wheel by yourself, and I know people probably have varying degrees of opinions on that, but yeah, I can imagine it's just really hard to build these things from the ground up. I can't even imagine not just expense, but human power that you will need to get these things going. So, I mean, I think that a lot of times, and NiftyQ, I want to ask you about the red flag question, but something I just want to insert really quickly is like, when thinking about Web3 and, NFT founders, I just think a lot of times they're just really altruistic and adding video games as a utility just to keep their collectors engaged or to turn on new collectors or the potential of collectors. Like say it's a project that's not, minted yet. And I don't want to say that that's a mistake in a recorded space. I'm just saying I'm not interested in that personally. But NiftyQ, go ahead.
On the red flag discussion, I do think again it would raise more questions. I think that's the best way to put it. Like I'm not going to completely just turn away completely, but it's definitely going to raise more questions. I do think there's this situation happening now where we see a company like Yuga or other companies that are building like native Web3 games, but we've come so far to see other established studios like Epic Games starting to kind of get in the mix. So I think that's another kind of concept that we didn't really hit on, and I think we teleported to 411 right now. My time, it feels like we just started the space a second ago, but I do think like the Web3 from the ground up, like games are something that needs to be fleshed out, and we've seen models, and we're going to iterate on that. But we'll also see a different type of model, which is the Fortnites, the League of Legends. Eventually, we'll see this, but who knows when. So there is that happening, sitting here in 2023. And I guess the last thing I'll touch off on is kind of just like reiterating my thought on the other side, being a medium for these teams, because if you're sitting there as a Cryptodes or a World of Women or CryptoPunks or all the other partners that they mentioned would be in the initial release for the other side. Like the genius of that is they don't have to build the other side. They can just be in the other side. Their holders and collectors can now participate in the other side without having to build that from the ground up. And so you don't need these massive $100 million or millions of dollars to build out your own metaverse, or virtual world, I should say. What you can do is like utilize that platform, the other side, to tell your community story in that form without spending a dime, or I'm sure you had to spend some, but without spending nearly as much, probably literally like 100th of a percentile, like as much. So yeah, I'm just super bullish on the ability for all of these NFT communities, specifically the PFP communities, to tell their story, because that's going to be, at the end of the day, one of the major utilities, because everyone's looking around right now like, why am I going to buy a PFP? And I think storytelling is going to be a part of that.
I love that. Yeah, go ahead, BGF.
A little bit of a tangent here, but like along very similar lines. I think especially in like the Web3 and NFT space, there's been this, I don't know, obsession around interoperability. And I think the farther we go down this progression of development towards broader establishment and support of Web3 enabled games is the idea of composability rather than interoperability, and that these assets can be like built upon rather than featured uniquely across all of these ecosystems. And like to me it's like a very nuanced but like important distinction, because composability allows that like open source semi permissionless kind of like assets as a platform to be built upon, rather like it supports like the network effects on like the infrastructural and application layers, rather than having the same thing be featured across, say, like Fortnite and CS:GO and GTA. That like the single asset, the token, the NFT, can be representative of different things across ecosystems. And I think we're going to see a lot like a disproportionate more of that than we will interoperability.
I just keep asking myself, I'll just get along, gamers, NFT collector, like, and just make it work and get your PFP skins in your video games and all this. We went over, but I do want to ask one more question, if we could just keep it brief, to all of our guests today. And you guys all kind of touched on it a little bit. I know you mentioned Yuga, 10KTF, Oniforce, Fortnite, all of that. But what are some of the most exciting and innovative moves that you've seen happening in Web3, whether it's like games, gamification of any sort? Who's cutting edge here, if there is? I feel like Yuga is probably going to be one of those that you guys speak of. And just generally, like, what's the future, or is there a future for gaming to intersect and function within Web3? I just want to leave it on that note, whatever anyone has to contribute to that.
I didn't want to butt in, but I would say if I had to like shout out a few projects that are doing some like exciting stuff, I would say what Dr. Disrespect is doing with Midnight Society and Dead Drop probably has like the highest likelihood or chance at breaking through into like a massively adopted Web3 blockchain enabled game right now. Like he individually has the audience to give that thing a fair shot. And then the fact that they've got literally hundreds of developers outside investment capital, not reliant on NFTs or royalty sales to be a successful game, is incredibly promising. Play Wildcard doing some really cool stuff. I would say Sobi with Ex Populus. They've got like multiple games in development right now. I would say Parallel with everything that they're doing, just kind of like along the lines of experimental type stuff. What they've done, like, yes, the foundation of all of it is kind of like this trading card game, but what they're building as these composable layers of three-dimensional assets and kind of again that composability of these like assets and token layers built on top of them is really interesting. And then I'd do a disservice to myself and the company I work with to not, kind of plug that I'm very excited about the Reboot protocol and what we're building with Battle Plan.
Can we get some alpha from VGF? Can we hear about this Battle Plan, Arbitrum, and Reboot? I'm excited about it. What can we get?
If I just had to like leave a nugget, the Supernova which is kind of like the kickoff event, is coming sooner rather than later. It has not been formally announced yet, so I can't really drop any alpha in that regard, but sooner rather than later. And you could probably expect launch, we'll call it summer. I don't want to like back myself up into a corner, but it's coming along here pretty quick.
He didn't say what summer, what year, so he left it wide open there. And so, Keegan, NiftyQ, what are you guys excited about? Innovative moves you see happening?
I'll chime in real quick. First, I agree everything VGF just said, and thank you for sharing the nugget. I know you're. Who knows what kind of NDAs you're under and what you can and cannot say, but I'm excited for what you guys are bringing in the near future. But I do think that there's a lot of resources and I guess like tools that I think are really going to help the gaming sector, and that's kind of what I'm excited about. Like Hyperplay, which is basically an equivalent of like Steam. It's the platform where these games will kind of like have the servers and have the users where they can connect and start playing and interacting. And it's Web3 friendly. So I think that's going to be an important shift. I was lucky enough to talk to some of the team members at ETH Denver, and they really have a good grasp on what's happening and how they're going to move forward. Another platform is called Community Gaming, which is a tournament platform for setting up these online tournaments where the payout is automatic. It can be done in USDC or it can be done in crypto. So platforms like that to help kind of like set some foundational cornerstones, I think are going to be imperative in order for this to become the norm for gaming. Another thing that I think is super creative is what the Deadfellas are doing. So they're having a streaming kind of platform users for holders. So all the holders get an AR version of their character, of their Deadfellas, and they can use that for streaming. And so they're selecting 10 people to be part of their streaming team. And they're going to, my understanding, I'm not a holder, but my understanding is they're going to be compensated to do streaming services using their AR filter of their Deadfellas playing games. And so I think that's a really unique avenue to help connect with your community members, empower them to uplift the brand, and actually be out there with the people and actually making some new connections and new eyes and ears, because really that's what we need. We can't have the same people in here going over and over the same stuff. We need to have new individuals coming into the space to learn and to grow. And I think that's a really creative medium to do it, and to give the resources to those holders, give them the tools and let them build, if you will. Let them cook in the kitchen, but giving them the banners, giving them the graphics, giving them the AR filters. I think these are all things that are going to help move the space, move the gaming sector in the direction it needs to go to.
Yeah, alongside that onboarding piece, I'm super interested in Electronic Arts and like FIFA and these different like how sports collectibles kind of merge with gaming. I think maybe, even a year or two ago, that wasn't really on anybody's radar, but the ability to, in something like a FIFA, own the different cards that are in that game, I think that is going to be something we see within the next, coming years. And I think sports collectibles are not talked about as much, but there's some crossover there with gaming. Other than that, I definitely follow Tim Sweeney from Epic Games. Like that, I think he, most individuals that are at his level, understand the digital property rights, the ownership within games, and I think Epic Games is going to be this like Web 2.5 or the best example of Web 2.5 that we've seen. So Epic Games for sure, things that come out of that, and then within the Web 3 space and that are building from the ground up, natively, I would say Yuga Labs, of course, like. If they're successful, it's going to be rocket fuel for where we're trying to get to. Illuvium is one that I've always been following. I think they have a team that understands tokenomics. Like we didn't really get into like the fungible token piece of this and having fungible tokens within games, but I think Illuvium is one that I'm super interested in. And then Avagachi is always a team that I revert back to because they're just awesome. Like they're straight up OGs. They initially got me to bridge to Polygon for the first time when I didn't even know what that was, and have been doing a lot of things, and are super innovative. Like, I think that team is like one of the most underrated in the entire gaming space.
So this has been a very robust room in terms of gaming and information that I'm going to have to still continue to process. But we are going to wrap it up. I'm very grateful for all of you participating, and thank you to everybody who has showed up this afternoon. It's always a pleasure to hear from you guys, and you provide such great insight on the regular in these spaces. And again, I appreciate you spending your afternoon with us. So please follow these guys, and also thank you to NiftyKit for hosting this space. Follow NiftyQ, follow VGF, follow Keegan, and follow NiftyKit. And lastly, if you are a creator, please be in touch. If you want to become a NiftyKit creator, you can check out the pinned tweets above to learn more about V7. And you can reach out now via our website and hit up the support chat where there are real people there to answer questions. And we're going to help you launch your next NFT project if that's what you so desire. So back here next week for our AI roundtable with some familiar faces in the space. So with that, I'm going to play us out. Thank you guys again. Really appreciate you being here. It was a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much. All right, guys, have a great day. And thanks everybody for attending today.
Thanks, Jessica, for having us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.